Number 1. Dorothy Jane Scott. At 9 p.m. on May 28, 1980, 42-year-old Dorothy Jane Scott attended a work meeting. At this meeting, Dorothy noticed her co-worker, Conrad Bostrom, had a red mark on his arm and did not look well. Dorothy and another co-worker, Pam Head, left the meeting to take Conrad to the emergency room at UC Irvine Medical Center. The emergency room staff found Scott suffered from a black widow spider bite and treated him while Pam and Dorothy stayed in the waiting room. When Conrad was discharged at 11 p.m., Dorothy offered to pick him up from the exit because she did not want Conrad walking too far. Dorothy used the bathroom before heading to the parking lot. Pam and Conrad waited for Dorothy to pick them up from the exit, but her car was nowhere to be seen. After a few minutes, the two decided to walk to the parking lot to find Dorothy. When they got to the parking lot, they say they saw Scott's car speeding toward them. They were unable to see inside the car as the headlights were blinding them, and attempted to get Dorothy's attention by waving their arms. Instead of stopping, Dorothy's car sped past them, taking a sharp right out of the parking lot. At first, Pam and Conrad thought Dorothy might have had an emergency with her son, requiring her to leave. After a few hours went by where they had not received contact from Dorothy, the two reported her as missing. The next day at 4:30 a.m., Dorothy's empty white 1973 Toyota station wagon was found burning in an alley about 10 miles from the hospital. Investigators were unable to locate Dorothy or her body, and Dorothy's mother Vera would tell police something disturbing. In the last months before Dorothy was kidnapped, she had been receiving phone calls at work from a man who would alternate between declaring his love for Dorothy and making threats to kill her. On one occasion, the man called and told her to go outside because he had something for her. Dorothy went outside to find a single dead rose on her windscreen. These calls had terrified Dorothy, who had started karate classes and began registering for a handgun. On the final call before Dorothy's disappearance, the man told her, "Okay, now you're gonna come my way, and when I get you alone, I will cut you up into bits so no one will ever find you." Despite these calls, investigators were unable to make an arrest, and the alleged killer would continue to call. The man would speak of undisclosed details about Dorothy's appearance, such as the red scarf she was wearing on the night of her abduction, and knowledge Conrad Bostrom had suffered from a spider bite the night of May 28th. The man would continue to torture the family for 4 years with phone calls, usually in the afternoon, asking if Dorothy was home. The man would call and ask her parents if Dorothy was home, and go on to say he had taken her. Though the line was tapped by police, the caller would not stay on the phone long enough to be traced, or called at times when the phone wasn't tapped. On August 6, 1984, over 4 years after Dorothy's murder, a construction worker would discover a human skull, pelvis, arm, and 2 thigh bones 30 meters from Santa Ana Canyon Road. Police said the remains had not been buried and were only submerged partially due to soil erosion. Using dental records, they were able to confirm the body was in fact Dorothy Scott, but unable to determine the cause of death. The murder of Dorothy Scott remains unsolved to this day. Number 2. Gunthestol. On the 25th of October, 1984, Gunthestol, an unemployed food engineer from Germany, had begun to speak to his wife about unknown people he believed were trying to harm him, referring to these people as them, before suddenly shouting, "Now I've got it," and writing 6 letters, YOGTZE, though it is argued the G may also be a 6. Gunther then crossed out the letters he had written and shortly later went to his favourite pub in Windsor. After ordering a beer, Gunther reportedly fell over, injuring his face. Witnesses would report he did not look like he was under the influence of alcohol or drugs, but rather he just suddenly lost consciousness. Coming back into consciousness, he left the pub in his VW Gold, and his whereabouts for the next 2 hours cannot be determined. At 1 a.m. on October 26th, he arrived in his hometown, finding an elderly woman he'd known from his childhood. The woman would not open the door for him as it was too late, and told Gunther to go to his parents' place and speak with them instead. After telling the woman he would, he mentioned horrible incidents that would take place tonight. He left shortly after and was next seen at 3 a.m. by 2 truck drivers who discovered Gunther's crashed VW Gold in a trench on the highway. One of the drivers went to call the police and the other approached the vehicle, finding Gunther naked but conscious in his car. Gunther said there had been 4 men in the car with him, but they had run away. When asked if they were his friends, Gunther confirmed they weren't, but passed away on the way to the hospital. What made this case stranger is they found the injuries Gunther had were not caused from the car accident or suspected assault from the men, but rather he had been run down in a different car in a different location. At the time of this incident, Gunther was already naked, and after its occurrence he was put in the passenger seat of his own car and driven into the trench. Investigators were unable to find out what Gunther's message of YOGTZE or Y06TZE actually meant in any language. Theories range from a Romanian radio call sign, yogurt flavoring, a number plate, and more, but nothing has been proven conclusively. There are multiple theories about Gunther's death, one being he got mixed up with drug dealers during his holiday to the Netherlands, though this has been proven to be unfounded. The second and most likely is Gunther was suffering from a fit of paranoia, removing his own clothes as is common when people experience delirium, and was in the middle of the road when he was struck by another driver. The said driver may have panicked and put Gunther back in the car and attempted to make it look like an accident to escape possible punishment. Despite speculations and wild conspiracy theories, nothing has been proven, and Gunther's case still remains unsolved to this day. Number 3. Ken Mcelroy. 47-year-old Ken Rex Mcelroy lived in Skidmore, Missouri, and had grown a reputation as the town bully. Ken was the suspect of dozens of felonies, including assault, child molestation, statutory rape, arson, and animal cruelty. Ken was able to avoid charges 21 times because he would frequently intimidate witnesses into refusing to testify by following them, parking outside their house, and watching their movements. The father of 10 children with multiple women, Ken met his last wife, Trina McLeod, when she was 12 years old, and repeatedly raped her. In order to escape these charges, Ken planned to marry Trina and would go as far as to burn down Trina's family home and shoot their family's dog, until out of fear, the family relented and allowed the marriage to take place. Ken then divorced his then wife, Alice, and married Trina. Shortly after, Trina became pregnant at 14 and dropped out of school, and went to live with Ken and Alice. Only 16 days after giving birth to Ken's child, Trina and Alice fled to Trina's parents' house in an attempt to escape him. Ken tracked them down, bringing both to his home, and returned to Trina's family home while her parents were out, once again burning their house down and shooting their dog. Police used Trina's story to indict Ken for arson, assault, and statutory rape in 1973. Ken was arrested, booked, but released on $2,500 bail while awaiting trial. At this time, Trina and her child were placed in foster care in Maryville, Missouri. During this time, Ken would sit outside and stare at Trina's foster home for hours at a time, reportedly telling the foster family taking care of Trina that he knew where their biological daughter went to school, what bus route she took, and he would trade girl for girl to get his child back. Following this, additional charges were filed against Mcelroy. On July 27, 1976, Ken shot Romaine Henry twice with a shotgun after Romaine challenged Ken for shooting on his property. Ken was charged with assault with intent to kill, however, denied being at the scene. The court case dragged on without a set date, and in that time, Romaine reported Ken had parked outside his house at least 100 times. During the trial, 2 raccoon hunters testified they were with Ken the day of the shooting, and he was not at Romain's property. Ken's lawyer then forced Romain to admit he had his own criminal record that he had hidden for over 30 years, and Ken was acquitted of the charges. In 1980, Ken's young son would get into an argument with a clerk over some candy the child had tried to steal. In retaliation, Ken would then stalk the grocery store owner, 70-year-old Ernest Bowenkamp, and his wife Lois. Eventually, Ken entered the grocery store and threatened Ernest in the back with a shotgun. The confrontation led to Ken shooting Ernest in the neck. Fortunately, Ernest survived and Ken was arrested and charged with attempted murder, but only convicted with assault and freed on bail pending his request for appeal. Immediately after the trial, Ken went to a local bar with a rifle and bayonet, making graphic threats about what he was going to do to Ernest. This event led the patrons of the bar to contact police and see what they were legally allowed to do to prevent Ken from harming anyone else. The county sheriff suggested they form a neighborhood watch. On the same day the meeting between the townspeople and the sheriff took place, Ken returned to the same local bar he'd been to with his rifle and bayonet. While Ken was drinking at this bar, word got back to the townsfolk who left the meeting and flooded the bar. Ken finished his drink, purchased a 6-pack of beer, and entered his pickup truck. While sitting in the truck, Ken was shot several times and hit twice. There were 46 potential witnesses to the murder, including Ken's wife Trina, who was in the truck when Ken was shot. No one called for an ambulance after the shooting, and only Trina claimed to identify a gunman. However, the other 46 witnesses claimed they were either unable to name an assailant or could not see who fired the fatal shots. The DA conducted a federal investigation and would ask local residents what had happened. One resident replied with, "He needed a killing." Their investigations did not lead anywhere, and the DA declined to press charges. The murder of Ken Mcelroy has never been solved, and it's clear residents that suffered this man's wrath are happy to keep it that way.